This video will be on order of operations. Let's begin with how we simplify expressions with multiple operation symbols. Consider the expression 2 plus 3 times 5. Here we need to be careful about which operation we perform first. Do we add first, or do we multiply first? One way to eliminate this confusion is to use grouping symbols. And some examples of grouping symbols include parentheses, brackets, braces, absolute value bars, square roots, and the fraction bar. So if we have grouping symbols enclosing 2 plus 3, this means we should add first. So adding 2 plus 3 equals 5, and then multiplying 5 times 5 equals 25. If instead the grouping symbols are enclosing 3 times 5, then we would multiply first. So 3 times 5 equals 15, and then we add 2 plus 15 to give us 17. Notice how, depending on which operation is performed first, we will obtain a different answer. So what if no grouping symbols were present in our expression? Then we will need to go over the agreed upon order of operations. First, we perform all operations within grouping symbols, starting with the innermost set. The next step would be to evaluate any exponents. Third step would be to multiply or divide in order from left to right. And then the fourth step will be to add or subtract in order from left to right. And we can use the mnemonic PEMDAS to remember our order of operations, where P stands for parentheses or any grouping symbol, E stands for exponents, M and D stand for multiplication or division, but remember the order we perform these operations will depend on the order we see it in our expression, looking from left to right. And the same applies for A and S, which stand for addition or subtraction. Okay, so let's go back to our example, 2 plus 3 times 5. We will now simplify this expression using our order of operations. The first step would be to perform all operations within grouping symbols, starting with the innermost set. However, there are no grouping symbols present in this expression, so we will move on to the second step, which is to evaluate any exponents. There are also no exponents in this expression, so we will move on to the third step, which is to multiply or divide in order from left to right. We do have multiplication present in this expression, so we will multiply 3 times 5, which equals 15. Bring down the rest of the expression, and then we move on to the fourth step, which is to add or subtract in order from left to right. Addition is present in this expression, so we will add 2 plus 15, which equals 17. Let's try a few more examples. For the first example, we want to simplify the following expression. And let's write the mnemonic PEMDAS on the side for reference. The first step would be to check for expressions in parentheses or any grouping symbols. But looking at this expression, we can see that there are no grouping symbols present, so we will move on to the second step, which is to evaluate any exponents. We do have an exponent present, which is the 5 squared, so we will perform this operation first. 5 squared simplifies to 25, and then we will bring down the rest of the expression. Our next step is to multiply or divide in order from left to right. So we do have division present with 6 divided by 3, which equals 2, and then we bring down the rest of the expression. And our final step would be to add or subtract in order from left to right. And since we do have addition present, we will add 2 plus 25, which equals 27. For the next example, we perform the same steps. The first step is to simplify expressions within parentheses or any grouping symbols. And as we can see, there are no grouping symbols present in this expression, so we move on to the second step, which is to evaluate any exponents. There are no exponents present in this expression, so we will move on to the third step, which is to multiply or divide in order from left to right. Now, looking at this expression from left to right, we can see that division comes first. So we will simplify 20 divided by 5 first. This will equal 4, and then we will bring down the rest of the expression. And now we will perform our multiplication, so we multiply 4 times 2, which equals 8. For example 3, we start with our first step, which is to simplify expressions within parentheses or any grouping symbol. We do have grouping symbols present as brackets, which encloses this entire expression. However, we want to start with the innermost set since we have additional grouping symbols within the brackets. So within these parentheses, we have two operations. We have addition and we have multiplication. We still need to follow the order of operations within these parentheses. And since we perform any multiplication or division before any addition or subtraction, we will multiply 2 times 3 first. 2 times 3 equals 6, and we rewrite the rest of the expression. We continue to simplify within these parentheses, so our next step will be to add 1 plus 6, which equals 7. And now that we have fully simplified the expression within the parentheses, we will work with the outer expression that is enclosed in the brackets. Here we have two operations. We have multiplication and we have subtraction. Following our order of operations, we perform any multiplication or division before any addition or subtraction. So we multiply 5 times 7, which equals 35. Then we subtract 35 minus 10, which is 25. Okay, now that we have fully simplified the expressions within our grouping symbols, we will now move on to evaluating any exponents. And since there are no exponents present in this expression, we move on to performing any multiplication or division operations. So we will multiply 2 times 25 next, which equals 50. And then our final step will be to perform any addition or subtraction operations. So adding 1 plus 50 gives us 51. Okay, so sometimes you may encounter expressions with fraction bars. Fraction bars will also act as a grouping symbol. The expression in the numerator and the expression in the denominator should be treated as if they were in parentheses. This means we would have to simplify both the numerator and the denominator first before simplifying the overall fraction. So, for example, 7 plus 5 over 6 minus 4 is the same thing as if we were to enclose 7 plus 5 in parentheses and then divided by 6 minus 4, also enclosed in parentheses. Here, we would have to simplify the expressions in parentheses first, and then once simplified, we can divide. Starting with the numerator, we can simplify 7 plus 5, which equals 12, and then simplifying the denominator, 6 minus 4, which equals 2. Now that the numerator and denominator are both simplified, we then want to simplify the overall fraction. Since 12 is divisible by 2, we can divide 12 into 2, which equals 6. Let's try simplifying another expression that involves fraction bars. So for example 4, we'll begin with writing the mnemonic PEMDAS on the side as reference. Our first step would be to simplify expressions within parentheses or any grouping symbol. Now, since we have a fraction bar in this expression, we would consider this as a grouping symbol. So we will have to simplify the numerator, then simplify the denominator, and then simplify the overall fraction. So let's start with simplifying the numerator first. We still need to follow our order of operations for this expression. So our first step is to simplify expressions in parentheses or any grouping symbol. The square root is considered a grouping symbol, so we will start with this first. The square root of 25 is 5, and then our next step would be to evaluate any exponents. So we simplify 2 squared. 2 squared equals 4, and our next step would be to multiply or divide in order from left to right. And since we don't have any multiplication or division present, we move on to addition or subtraction. And again, we do this in order from left to right. So we will simplify 3 plus 5 next, which equals 8. Then our last step would be to subtract 8 minus 4, which equals 4. Now that we have simplified the numerator completely, we can move on to simplifying the denominator. So using our order of operations, our first step would be to simplify expressions in parentheses or any grouping symbol. This entire expression is enclosed in brackets, and we want to start with the innermost set, which is 8 minus 5 in parentheses. So 8 minus 5 equals 3. And now we have 2 operations left within the brackets. We have addition and we have multiplication. We will perform multiplication next, since this step comes prior to any addition or subtraction. So 4 times 3 equals 12. Then we add 3 plus 12, which equals 15. Now that we've finished simplifying the expression within our brackets, we would move on to evaluating any exponents. Since there are no exponents, we could move on to multiplying or dividing. So 2 times 15 equals 30. And now that we've simplified the denominator completely, we move on to simplifying the overall fraction. We have 4 over 30, and we can simplify this because 4 and 30 have a common factor of 2. We can rewrite 4 as 2 times 2, and we can also rewrite 30 as 2 times 15. Then we can divide out the common factor of 2, so 2 over 2 reduces to 1 over 1, and our final fraction simplifies to 2 over 15.